Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Reads with Joel. I'm Joel, and today we're going to be talking about the OG, the Big Daddy Bucks himself, Karl Marx. And I have an interesting relationship with Marx. I'm argued vigorously against him, and at other points, I found him to be quite insightful, especially young Marx and his discussion on alienation, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And so for today, I'm going to try and break down the concept of alienation in its four parts. If you want to read about this, you can look for the 1844 essays of Karl Marx. It's a little dry, but I think compared to Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto, this is probably one that you would get an appreciation of where he was headed in terms of his understanding of how material conditions affect the way we live. So yeah, let's have a discussion about this. Now, Marx's point here, the point he was living in London and he was seeing the Industrial Revolution happen, and his commentary was about the sort of absurdity with the economy booming, with a lot of money being created, a lot of products being created, and modern life coming to bear, and the individuals that were working to create this feeling dissatisfied, feeling disenfranchised, and how all the returns went to a minority at the top versus the vast majority of people that imbue their labor and push themselves into creating something. Doesn't sound so different from life today. But his point is that human beings are a species, and as species being, there's something about our essence, and that essence is that we are capable of working beyond subsistence. Every creature lives and creates things in order for them to simply survive, to keep going to the next day and to procreate. We do that at a basic level, but then we seem to have a need, and we participate in labor, creative, productive work that creates surplus value, that allows us to abstract and plan for the future and do all sorts of things. So that his argument is the essence of a human being is to be creative and to take something as an idea in our heads and create that into the world. We can take different materials and make them something in the world. We can instantiate the things that we want to see, or our vision, our imagination, and make it real in the world. So the problem comes in when we start to be alienated from the things that we create. Now, maybe to comment on the idea of alienation, it can sound like a mystical subject. It just means that the connection between your understanding and your contextualization of whatever it is that you've made and what it actually appears to be is fractured. The example I'll give is in the four ways that he talks about how we're alienated. We're alienated from the products, from the process, from others in terms of our understanding of what they are and what they do, and we're alienated from ourselves. So it might make sense if I go through all four. Prior to that, understand that the Marxist analysis follows from a Hegelian concept. The Hegelian concept is that all through history sort of is moving towards something by a clash of different ideas. So you have, say, aristocracy that has one person at the top, and there's an elite few who control everything. And then you have mercantilism, who say, well, people who have industry and not are noble born can also have control of the economy. Now, those two ideas sort of butt heads. Probably one wins out, incorporates certain ideas of the other, then another idea develops in contrast to mercantilism, and history is just a movement, a progress by dialectical confrontations. And the view is that it's all moving towards a much better understanding of who we are and of freedom, like world spirit. It's very esoteric and abstract. So Marx takes a dialectical materialist view, in that he's saying it's not some world spirit and God coming to understand himself through these conflicts between different ideologies. It's more just the material conditions keep changing, and they bear the seeds for revolution. Every stage, he praises the bourgeoisie, which is the middle class, for unleashing and breaking apart the old mold of feudalism, and bringing forth a greater sense of freedom, a greater sense of productivity. But along with it come the issues of alienation that we're going to be speaking about. Not to say that there was an alienation before, it's just perfected under the capitalist mode. So the first one is alienation from product. If you work, you're paid a wage. And if you worked for yourself, whatever you produced would remain with you. You have ownership of it. You've put your labor into this thing, your creativity, and then when you take it to the market, you are receiving an exchange value, or maybe you're selling it for its use value, and all those returns come back to you. You have both the satisfaction of being rewarded for the labor that you've put in, but also you have the connection to what it is that you've created. You have an intimate understanding of, you will decide where it goes and who gets to purchase it. In the rationality of productivity under a capitalist mode is you don't have access to the means of production. And therefore, for you to produce, you need to utilize someone else's means of production. You go to work, the office gives you a laptop, it gives you the rules in which you're going to operate, it tells you where to be, how to do the work, it instructs you and places you into a certain mold. However creative, however different you might think you are told exactly how you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do. That's a very big difference from the feudal system, where simply the king or the ruler would take a portion of whatever it is you're created, but they wouldn't tell you how to grow your crops. They wouldn't tell you when to harvest. They just knew that whatever portion you create, they're going to take a little bit out of what you're doing. But you have the freedom in terms of how you arrange your factors of production. When you're a laborer, what you get in exchange is wages. So you sell your labor, you sell your essence, and that is where you become alienated from what it is that you make. You become almost a subsistence person. You work because you need to survive, and you might have different wants. Marketing and the need for production to keep going increases the amount of needs that you have. Things which could be called wants become more and more needs, and so you sort of live for the job. The job is what you have to do. You grumble as you're doing it because you're not connected to what it is that you're doing. If left to your own druthers, you might have done it differently. You might have added your own creativity. And a few people may have that advantage in the service economy, but the vast majority of people don't. And so people are alienated from the products that they create. They seem to belong to someone else, and they are a mere cog in the wheel. They become a human resource, which is... a resource is something that is meant to be exploited. You can think about that. The second is the process. So the process is you begin to equate productive activity with work. And so you think about what happens on Monday morning. Got to go through the grind. You pump yourself up into it. You've got to go and sell. If you work in the service economy like I do, you don't only just give your physical labor, but you have to give your intellectual labor and your emotional one as well. You're expected to have a certain type of attitude. You're expected to speak in a certain way. You're expected to position yourself in the mold and the ethics of wherever it is that you're working for. And that means that you might start to equate production and doing things creatively with a certain version of you that is work. There's a good show called Severance that's about that, about people who sort of go into work and they split their personality. So you go into work and you forget what it is that you were doing outside. So when you're at work, you're just a worker. No personal problems come in. And then when you're off from work, you don't think about those things. I think that's a wishful fantasy that many of us have, that could we just endure our work? Could we just switch off and have someone else do that work and receive the benefits? Which is a sad thing, because productivity is about us. We are creative. We want to do art. We want to have our own projects. But the exhaustion that comes from selling our labor to someone else means that all we do is consume in our free time. We consume alcohol, we consume drugs, maybe value, we consume entertainment, we become consumers in our free time and become producers in someone else's time. And so we remove the productive capacity of us as human beings from our feeling of when we are most human. So we feel most human when we are at Ciroc Branch. And for him, that's a problem. The third type is alienation from others. Now, this alienation means that because we're all in the grind, we're all trying to achieve something, we see other people as potential competitors or potential allies. And so even networking, we start to see people because of their use value. Think about what happens if you are in a group of friends and someone gets a promotion. Unless people are very genuine and thoughtful, it's easy for those relationships to change, because now this person has economic value that can help you advance yourself. And so you might laugh a little bit louder at their jokes. They might have a little more sway than they used to. And so the relationships between us are based on the commodities that we're able to give. The ultimate commodity is cash. It's the ultimate exchangeable commodity. But because of that, it obscures the relationship we have with each other. These glasses that I was holding up, I bought these things. I have almost no clue how they were made, but there are definitely a number of people who went into designing it, into figuring out how they're going to look, hoping that someone might use them. But more or less, it might be that everyone that made this was just hoping to get paid and probably have no connection to me enjoying it. Someone marketed it, trying to get me to have a feeling that it is going to make me look sexy. And I bought it because I'm a dunce. And here I am. So this product represents, I exchanged my own time, got a commodity called money, and then paid for this. So it's a large system of cooperation if you look at it from the top. It's a miraculous thing. It's a miraculous thing that we're able to take products from someone who I don't even need to care about, who I don't need to agree with religiously. They produce, I consume. But what is lost in that is that we stop to see each other as actual human beings. We see just the products of our work and we only relate to that. We don't have a full understanding of what goes into making this. I saw a shirt the other day which was kind of dark, which was about trying to stop sweatshops. And there were t-shirts that said stop sweatshops. And probably the fact is that shirt was maybe made in a sweatshop if it was going to be cheap enough to make sense. So there's that disconnect in the work that we do. Then lastly, there's alienation from ourselves. And the alienation from ourselves is we are involved in this economic system in which everything is pushing us towards being either good workers, and now it's even more subtle in that you have to motivate yourself. You have to be on the hustle. You have to be good. And so you are the one making yourself a product. You're making yourself a worker, and you're establishing your value with the status that you have from your labor. And that makes us alienated from ourselves. Further to the alienation from other people, we're unable to fully be who we are, because without substantial relations, we become cogs again. And even think about the way we arrange our homes, the fact that who's going to make what money, who gets to be the head of the household. All these things are starting to affect our human relations, and that leads to our alienation. Now, this idea for me has been very present because I feel it a lot of the time, and I think we all struggle with trying to say, how can I remain authentic in this system? How can we, sort of push back? And this is where the idea of I guess Marx was thinking that we wouldn't put up with it and rise up. But maybe he underestimated how much bullshit we can put up with. There are definite critiques. The biggest critique I have of this thing, even though I think it's a substantial point, is that human beings maybe don't have an essence. That all we have is that we exist. And our existence, we create ourselves through our essence. So to say that there is a right way for us to be, it might be difficult, but definitely we can find unsatisfactory ways in which we organize ourselves. So I would like you to think about your everyday life, how alienated you might be from the work that you do, from the process in which it gets done, from the other people that you work with and compete with, but most importantly with yourself. I think if we have a thoughtful understanding of that, we might be a little bit more attentive and might be a little bit more humane in the work that we do and the lives that we live. Thank you so much for listening, and Have a great Sunday.